As of 2022, the GAT has a new writing task as part of its new Section A, and it's something that hasn't been seen before on any of those GATs that predated the 2022 one. What I'm going to take you through today is a sample piece that I've written in response to the 2022 GAT Section A writing task, as well as taking you through the 6 criteria that you'll be marked to ensure that whatever year you're sitting the GAT, when it comes to that Section A writing task, you're writing a purposeful piece and you're fully aware of how you're being assessed, and so you're not writing stuff that's irrelevant or that's going to be leading you down the wrong path. We're going to cover the 6 criteria that you need to be making sure you're covering, and also giving you a few hints about how you can do your absolute best with it. And so if we take a look at the material that the 2022 students saw, you can see the very clear instructions there on your screen. There are 2 parts to this writing section. Complete each part in the space provided in your answer book. It's recommended that you spend up to 10 minutes completing part 1 and 20 minutes for part 2. So keep that in mind. It is a 10-minute writing task. You are not expected to be writing pages and pages and pages. You have half an hour overall in Section A of the GAT for the writing task, and you have a very clear instruction there about the 10 plus 20 minute rule. It's a great rule of thumb to keep in mind when you're also considering part 2, that if you've been given twice as much time, roughly, you should be writing about twice as much. The students in 2022 were presented with this short paragraph there to get them started with the material. E-scooters are electric scooters which offer an alternative means of transport. The use of e-scooters is currently being trialled in some towns where they are otherwise illegal to use. The trials are to test if e-scooters can be used safely. What was then presented to students were these visuals that you can see here now. This is where you've got to keep in mind that this is just a 10-minute task. You are only being asked to deal with the information that's being given to you. And the first impression you might have in looking at that is that it's 4 small little pictures there that don't seem to have a whole lot going on. That's why I'm going to show you what you can do with it with the sample piece that I'll present to you a little bit later on in this video. As we take a look there at the top photo, we have someone there with the protective gear and the arrows pointing to the knee pads, elbow pads and helmet. Underneath, we have 3 very clear visuals that show how people can use their arms and hands to communicate whilst they are driving an e-scooter. The only other thing that students were given for part 1 in this writing task was that very clear set of instructions that you can also see. Write about how to ride safely for someone who is learning to ride an e-scooter. Now, if you are sitting this GAT in 2023 or beyond, whenever it is that you might be sitting it, you will not be writing about e-scooters. They're not going to run over that same information again, but I can bet my bottom dollar that they will give you just as much information in that one sentence. And there's actually a lot more going on in that sentence than you might have considered the first time. One of the things that you are going to be assessed on, the very first criteria that you're assessed on for this writing task, is your ability to write for an audience and to write with purpose. Both of these are given to you here in this task statement. You are writing about how to ride safely. That's your purpose. That's what this task is all about. Anything that's not doing that is irrelevant to the task. You are writing for someone who is learning to ride an e-scooter. So your audience has been given to you. What you are being tested on then is your ability to write for that audience and with that purpose. With all of that in mind, we're going to take a look at the sample piece here. I'll copy and paste an overall copy of it and put this in the description for this video so that you can copy and paste it and tinker with it and take a look at it in your own time, but you'll also see it here on your screen now. Part 1. Riding around on an e-scooter is a fun and convenient way to transport yourself to everywhere you need to get to. However, in order to fully enjoy all the great things about riding, you need to first ensure that you're keeping yourself and others safe. So a really clear 2-sentence introduction. It's showing the assessor that I am well aware of what my purpose is here, where I've written, in order to fully enjoy all the great things, you need to ensure that you're keeping yourself safe. So I'm really nailing the purpose. And it's also showing that I'm writing directly to someone who is learning to ride a scooter. So I've also got that audience in mind. It's a clear, concise opening that is meeting those criteria of audience and purpose. The other criteria that you need to be aware of is your ability to work with the ideas and your ability to write with a structure and cohesion. After that, we get into the technical parts that I'll take you through a bit later with grammar, punctuation, spelling, etc. Let's take a look at how it gets into the ideas of this piece. Before you even step onto the scooter, you should ensure that you're kitted out in the right protective gear. A helmet, elbow and knee pads are essential in order to protect yourself from injury, particularly while you're building your confidence. So a couple of really subtle things here that lead to this being an effective sample piece. Take a look at this last little phrase here, particularly while you're building your confidence. That is a line that shows really clear awareness of who this piece is being written for. While you're building your confidence, I'm showing a really clear understanding of who the audience is that is reading this piece. You're also going to be tested on your ability to use an effective vocabulary throughout section A with both of these part 1 and part 2 pieces. And a term like kitted out is a really fantastic way of showing that you have a way of taking the information and using some specific terms that are really helping you get the job done and show that you know what you're talking about. It's not the most glamorous, most ridiculous word that anyone's ever heard of, but it is an effective way of discussing the material and coming up with terms that weren't there in the material to help you communicate it effectively. Of course, this short paragraph, there's only 2 sentences here, covers the material that talked about the helmet, elbow and knee pads. All it's done with it is talked about the fact that that is going to help you while you're building your confidence. It's as simple as that. It's taking those ideas and showing why they are important and how you can use that for your intended purpose. Let's move on to the next little paragraph. It's also thoroughly important to understand how you can safely communicate with other motorists and pedestrians. And so we're moving on. We've organised this piece where it's moved from the first visual that was all about the safety gear, now moving on, obviously, to talk about those, right hand, left hand, stop signals that were shown. And it's just a nice way of introducing it there to talk about the fact that really what's happening in those pictures is communication with other pedestrians and motorists. Now, if I was reading this sample piece and assessing it, I'd be thinking to myself, this student's using a really effective vocabulary. This student is able to elaborate on the ideas that were provided for them instead of just rewriting the fact that it says, put your left arm out if you're going to turn left, put your arm up like that if you're going to stop. This student is actually taking what those ideas are representative of and doing something with them. This student is saying that it's about communication with motorists and pedestrians. That's the level of understanding that you need to get to. And that is the most clear way that I can point out how you can do well on this task when it comes to ideas, is to be able to take what the pictures are saying and turn them into your own written language. When you can find a way of doing that, you're setting yourself up to be able to write a really concise, well-organised piece that's really nailing what you're trying to do. Placing your left or right arm out straight indicates to others which way you intend to turn, meaning everyone around you is aware of where you're headed. So again, rather than just copying the material or putting very basic language to the visuals by saying, if you place your left hand out, that shows that you are turning left. If you place your right hand out, etc. It's going a little bit further. It's using language nicely and it's showing exactly what that is about, where we're talking about intentions, where you intend to turn. Coming up with words that weren't obviously there in that visual that is showing an understanding of it. Meaning everyone around you is aware of where you're headed. Again, we're really showing an understanding and appreciation of the audience for whom we're writing this for. As most e-scooters don't have brake lights, it's also essential to indicate when you are coming to a complete stop. So this is a really good sentence to show the difference between how you go about just writing directly what the material is, and saying in that if you put your hand up, it means you're going to stop, and taking it a little bit further with it's essential to indicate when you are coming to a stop. The little aside there about as most e-scooters don't have brake lights, it's a little bit of decoration. It makes it sound nice. It changes up the sentence so it's not just a simple sentence. It's a nice little way of making this piece flow a little bit better. Obviously, there is no mention of brake lights in the material, and so you might be thinking, well, can I bring that up, and should I bring something up that isn't in there? If it helps with the flow of your piece and it helps you elaborate on an idea and take it a bit further, then it's definitely worth doing. And that's the line you have to be able to find yourself between. Not including irrelevant material that's not helping you do anything, but also knowing when you can go a little bit further than what the material has said in order to flesh it out that little bit. And the more you practice that, the more you'll see that really there's a nice balance that you can find there that helps you really communicate this material effectively. This can be achieved by making a clear gesture with your non-dominant hand, bending your arm at a right angle and making a fist. So again, the really great balance with this piece is that it is pointing out what is there in those visuals, but it's not just rehashing them, in a very, very clear and plain and basic way. We then have a fourth paragraph or one little sentence to finish off. By following these guidelines, you'll ensure that your time as an e-scooter driver will be safe for you and everyone else you zoom past as you enjoy this great mode of transport. Again, a little bit of decoration. It sounds nice in terms of organisation and cohesion, which is something else that you're going to be assessed upon. It is allowing you to finish off the piece with a sense of a conclusion. It's also allowing you to, bring in some other vocabulary there with, zooming past and this great mode of transport. Essentially, that's how we go about part one. You'll notice there that it is not an extensive, very long task. As I mentioned before, it's only 10 minutes that you've been given. There's only a very little amount of material that you are expected to look through. Don't make it something that it's not. Focus on what you're really being assessed on here. And so we dive over to part two of the Section A writing task. And what you'll notice is that part two is staying in the world of e-scooters and everything that we have the information on so far, but it's providing us with further information here. Take a look at the instructions that were given to the students of 2022. The following online article was posted about a public trial of e-scooters. Now, I'm not going to read for you all the information that's there in that article, but you can see the dot points that are there. Police have been reporting that riders haven't all been following the safety guidelines, and it talks about the injuries, whilst also providing 7 or 8 really clear dot points. Now, the first thing you want to make sure with this, you are not being tested on your ability to merely read a dot point and then write it in the exact same language all over again. That is not what we want to do here. You want to be able to work with it, and I'll show you an example of that when we show you the sample piece in just a moment. Down the bottom there, it has a very clear, bold sentence about being issued with a fine, and that's some more information that you can take on. The following infographic was also included in the article, and as you can see there, we have a bunch of percentages. Just like those dot points that I referenced earlier, you are not being tested on your ability to read those and write them as they are on that page in the same language. You are there to put them up there in your mind and put them down in a much more cohesive manner. A really clear statement for what you are expected to do with this task there in the box. You have been asked to write a short guide for e-scooter riders which outlines why there are rules for riding e-scooters. So your purpose has been made extremely clear to you once again. You should refer to both the article and the infographic in your response. So how would you go about it if you were writing in response to that piece with all of this information that you've been given? Feel free to press pause on either of those slides that I've put up showing the information so that you can take them all in and you'll get a really good understanding of how I've used them here in this sample piece. Keep in mind the criteria that I mentioned before: audience and purpose, structure, cohesion, ideas, vocabulary, punctuation, spelling, grammar. These are all the same things that you are being assessed on throughout part 1 and part 2 of section A. They are 2 separate writing tasks, with part 1 and part 2 being a part of it, but they are assessed globally all together. And so it's really important that you don't put all your effort into one and not the other, because they are seen as one overall product, and the things that you're being assessed to, the criteria that you're being assessed to, is the same for all of them. Let's take a look at this sample piece though. And I've given it a title. just to really show that I have that understanding of what I've been asked to do, that it's a guide that I'm writing for people as to why they need to follow the rules. It is Keeping You Safe is the title. It has been fantastic to see so many locals enjoying the benefits of the electric scooters through the current trial period. However, it must be remembered that the driving of these vehicles comes with a responsibility to yourself and to those with whom we share the local area. So the audience is very well catered for here. We're speaking directly to them. We're talking about the local area where the trial's happening. We have shown an understanding. Where you could do a poor job of this is if you just started writing plainly about e-scooters and statistics and everything like that without having an understanding of the overall context. So beginning with those two sentences that are showing I understand the world of this scooter trial and who I'm writing for really sets up an understanding of the audience, the purpose, the structure that I'm really looking to go for here, rather than just writing plainly dot points about injuries on e-scooters. Experience is seemingly playing a role in whether or not people are likely to be injured whilst riding the scooters. Just like if you are studying English and you have to write paragraphs that begin with topic sentences that make it clear as to what you're going to be saying in your paragraph, the first sentence here of this paragraph has taken in all of the information, and rather than beginning with the information like 92% of people who get hurt are first-time riders or kids under the age of 18 shouldn't be using it, both things that were actually said in the material, it's taken all of that and I've said, right, well, the overall idea that I can attach to that is experience. And so that way I'm elaborating on the ideas without simply just parroting them back in my own writing. Police are issuing a stern warning that all riders involved in the trial must be 18 years of age or older. Now, you might look at that and think, well, Ben, that's just a sentence that says pretty much what exactly one of the dot points says. And there are, of course, going to be times where it's hard for you to be able to write in, completely different language. It is okay from time to time if what you have written is very similar to what was there in the material, so long as what is around that is you elaborating on those ideas and taking them further. If you can only write things that have been written exactly the way they appeared in the material, then you haven't gone far enough with it. But also at the same time, don't think that you need to be changing absolutely everything and that you're going to be somehow penalised if occasionally you write something that is quite similar to the source material. Just like driving a car, there is an age restriction for a very important reason. Troublingly, we have had a percentage of community members under the age of 18 find themselves injured. This is something we must avoid as the trial continues. The experience of first-time riders is also significant, with nearly 1 in 3 first-timers finding themselves in an accident leading to injury of some kind. We will all grow more confident and more accustomed to this new way of getting around our town, but we must be vigilant as we begin to understand how we can safely integrate the scooters into our lives. That paragraph there, really making sure that when the instruction said outline why it's important that people follow the rules, you'll see in those sentences that that's really getting to why that is important and really making sure that the purpose is being met. Always remember to consider others when writing. When you take a look at this sample piece in your own time, you'll see that each paragraph has a very clear idea and purpose that it's working towards. There's been the experience, it goes on further with experience, and now we're talking about consideration of others. What that shows an assessor is that you are able to take in all of that information and then put it down with your own ideas and your own thinking and be able to communicate it in an effective way. The Council has outlined distinct areas for the trial, and these distinctions must be adhered to. Accidents have been occurring when drivers fail to give way or zoom off from the designated bicycle lanes and shared paths to ride on footpaths designed solely for pedestrian use. Take a look at that sentence that I've just read and take a look back at the material and you'll see exactly where I've got that from. It's a really good example of taking what's written in the material, expressing something that is pretty similar to what was there, but finding new ways of expressing it and not just parroting back exactly what it said. If we are to have scooters and walkers coexisting, we need everyone to follow the very simple rules of where to ride. Coexisting, a really good term for vocabulary, which is something you're being assessed on in this task, that shows an understanding of overall what this whole writing experiment is all about with the guidelines. Once we can be confident that users are looking out for others, we must ensure that all riders are looking out for themselves as well. A staggering 94% of riders not wearing a helmet are finding themselves injured, a statistic far too damning to ignore. So we can see there one of those dot points in the statistics from the original material being used and being used really effectively. It's also worth noting that speed has played a significant role in things going awry during the trial. Always keep in mind that riders are not to go any faster than 20 kilometres per hour. It's simple really. This trial has shown just how much fun and how convenient e-scooters can be for members of our community. If we can remember to look after ourselves and to keep an eye out for each other, then we can reduce the injuries and accidents and focus on safely enjoying our beautiful area. So the concluding paragraph, just like the introduction, making sure that I am signing off on the piece, ensuring that there's an organisation to it, that I'm really, going back to that purpose and the audience that I'm writing for, and finishing off really strongly. What I'm going to jump to now are the criteria that you are being assessed to. And I want you to take a look at these and have a think about how I have met these criteria in either of the pieces. If you have any questions about these criteria and how they are being met throughout the sample pieces, or if you're a bit confused or you feel like there's something I could have done a bit better, please make sure to put a question down there in the comments. The first criteria that you are going to be assessed on is your understanding of audience. And the word that I've put there in that first question is the link between the writer and the reader. That's what you want to be thinking of. Don't get too concerned with the specifics of the audience in terms of thinking, right, who exactly are they and what am I doing? Just make sure that you've got a strong link. If it's people that are learning to ride e-scooters, make sure that your language reflects that these are people that are inexperienced, learning, that this is a positive environment. These are not experts or anything like that, where you'd need to be very specific about, jargon and terms and things that are being used. Consider the language choices you're making and how your piece is getting to that purpose. Audience and purpose, really, really important when it comes to any writing, but particularly with this. The other thing to remember with purpose, when it comes to the audience as well, is thinking about the direct instructions that you received about exactly what you are writing and making sure that you're meeting those. Some students fall away here a little bit when they take in all the material and they think, yeah, okay, I've got all these stats, I'm just going to write about e-scooters. That's not what the instructions said. The instructions were very specific about what either piece was asking you to do. The next criteria is ideas. And so what you're being assessed on here is your ability to take the ideas from the material and do something with them. And this is something that you can practice by, doing some practice pieces and trialing it out. Have you been able to do more with the material simply than just restate it? Have you been able to take different things from the material and put them together to come to a point that is really helping you, show your overall understanding of it? The key word here is elaboration. Have you elaborated on the ideas? That is the main goal when it comes to ideas. Not just restating them, but elaborating on them. We then have structure and cohesion. It is not just as simple as going, okay, it just has to be split up into 4 or 5 even parts or anything like that. You'll notice that in each of mine, there is a balance of those paragraphs, and being able to put them there on that screen in front of you, you should see that there are very balanced paragraphs, but you'll also notice that each paragraph plays its part. Am I introducing my ideas? Am I signing off and restating my purpose in the conclusion? Or am I elaborating on a separate idea per paragraph? Take a look through and you'll notice that they are very well organised pieces of writing, both the part 1 and part 2 sample that I've gone through. What we have next to finish off are the more technical criteria. And whilst I can give you lots of advice for this, a lot of it is just about your proofreading and making sure that you are writing in a very correct manner. Essentially, because Section A of the GAT is assessing your literacy skills, you need to see this like an extension of everything you've been doing in English throughout primary and secondary school. With your grammar, are your sentences correct? Are they accurate? Do your sentences then enhance your piece of writing? Are you varying your sentence lengths? Are you varying your sentence types to create a sense of fluency in your writing and to also create engagement? You're also going to be assessed on your punctuation, your sentence level punctuation. Have you used question marks? Have you used commas appropriately to split clauses in your sentences or to list things? All of these different forms of punctuation. Have you been accurate? And with that, has your punctuation allowed you to write in a very fluent manner? These are the things you should be practicing. Finally, we have vocabulary and then spelling. With the vocabulary, keep in mind that it's not about going to the extreme and using these ridiculous words. It's about you using precise language that is helping you convey exactly what you're trying to say and that is showing you understand what the purpose of your piece is. Some of the best vocabulary in these sample pieces are terms that are not far out that you've never ever heard before, but terms that actually just help the piece move along. Something like from the part 2 piece, the word troublingly begins one of the sentences. It's a way of conveying what the police are trying to say to people about what they're doing in the trial. It's a great way of using precise terms to achieve a desired outcome. Finally, we have spelling, which the only advice I can give to you there is to aim to be as accurate as you can throughout your piece. Don't stress too much if you're not the world's best speller by thinking, oh, well, if everything else is perfect but my spelling's no good, it's going to ruin everything. Do your absolute best with it. Just know that your spelling is a part of what is assessed when it comes to Section A of the GAT writing task. Guys, thanks very much for watching this video. I hope that you've got a lot from it. Feel free to check out our Year 12 English videos that are also up on our channel. Feel free to put as many questions as you like down there in the comments. I'll be more than happy to help out with anything that you might be worried about or anything you might feel that I should have covered in this video that I haven't. Take a look at the sample pieces, read through them, prepare as best you can, and all the best for the GAT.